You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And this is Episode 2, Toaplan.
Yes, Toaplan, the long-time, short-time shooter company. This is a company that was really not around for that long of a time, but they have a surprising history, which we're going to get into. We've got 10 really awesome tracks, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys. I picked 5, Justin picked 5, and you may be kind of familiar with the track that we just played as the intro, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you were alive in the early 2000s, late 90s, you have more than likely heard that as part of an online video and a meme.
Yes, one of the earliest memes back in the day, the "All Your Base Are Belong to Us"
Correct.
Meme. Which I can't tell you. I mean, we've talked about this before privately, but we've both sat and watched that video countless times.
Oh my god.
And it's a shame that everybody really kind of knows the Zero-wing developer as only being famous for Zero-wing, and rightly so, but at the same time, they did put out some really surprising tracks that we're going to be playing on this episode.
Yeah. I mean, they may be a little bit more well-known depending on, what kind of gaming circles you were part of. I mean, if you were big on, shmups in the arcades, then you probably know who Toaplan is.
Yes.
But if not, I didn't know who Toaplan was even until more recently. I didn't know that they had anything to do with Zero-wing from that meme. I knew the meme.
Right.
And I played the game after seeing the meme, and didn't really know who Toaplan was.
Yeah, I played Zero-wing afterwards as well, and because I didn't know what the game was, I just knew that video was really funny and that the music was really good.
Yes.
So I wanted to check it out, and then when I actually heard the soundtrack, I was like, oh, this is awesome. So yeah, we're going to talk about the composers of Zero-wing, but we're also going to dive deep into some really surprising tracks that you may not have heard before. So some games that we're going to be talking about that are pretty obscure. So this is going to be an interesting episode.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off with some history on Toaplan. So Toaplan originally began back in the day, right around 1983, 84-ish. They started out as a company called Orca, and they made some Pac-Man clone type game called Changes. It's also called Looper. And then they went on to make a game called The Bounty, also known as River Patrol. And then they made a platformer called Springer, and they made 2 other shooters which were inspired by games like Star Force and Xevious. And unfortunately, they went under in 1984. So they were working on games for quite some, probably a couple years as Orca, and then went ahead and created a new company called Crux. And they only developed 2 games, Gyrodyne and Repulse, which is under Taito and Sega respectively. And Crux ended up unfortunately going bankrupt within less than a year, and they just didn't know, just probably were making these games and they just weren't catching on, probably weren't making too much money.
Yeah, that's really rough. I mean, not even lasting a year is
it's pretty tough,
pretty awful.
So then they later on formed to work with the programmer and designer of Orca, teamed up with Gyrodyne's programmer to form a brand new company called Toakikaku Toaplan called Project East Asia. I believe that's also the name of it. And Toaplan was born. So regarding the history of the company, they kind of got their start with Taito and Sega. So that kind of led them to working with other companies.
Yeah. When you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because they also ended up making a bunch of these shooter games, whether they were ports from the arcades, or I think there was a few that were made exclusively for the Genesis. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty close-knit there.
Yeah, I mean, the arcade hardware and the Genesis hardware were very similar, so I think that's one of the reasons why they were able to make games and port games over and make them so similar. So, but there were a ton of down ports too, which we'll be talking about a little bit about on this episode as well, which were less impressive. And then there's some other things that we'll talk about where we'll compare games, the Genesis versions to arcade versions, and find out that the Genesis versions are actually way better.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
I think I'd like to do an episode comparing specifically the Genesis, NES, and arcade games. Mm-hmm. Because I think that'd be an interesting topic to compare the games and the music on the games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a ton of different ports on tons of different systems. Yeah. So, if that's something you guys want to hear, let us know. You can email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com. So, what were some of the other companies that they were developing games for?
Yeah, no, so I mean, they also did some development with SNK as well as Data East.
Okay.
So those are fairly well known over here in the States, especially SNK if you like fighters. I don't think it had anything to do with the fighters. But,
no.
But then Toaplan kind of became a contractor for Taito between 85 and 89 back in the 80s. And from there, they kind of went and became their own independent publisher for most of the rest of their time being around.
Yeah.
Even ended up developing their own mascot, which you can find in a couple of games. It's named Pipiru.
Pipiru.
But they hit him in games like Zero Wing, Truxton 2, Outzone.
Yep.
But Konami did something like that too, where they had the little flying guy that was in.
You're talking about like Vic Viper,
Vic Viper,
from
yes,
Gradius. Yeah.
And it's like extra points in Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, and also like Parodius and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think that they were trying to establish themselves as their own independent publisher. They were really trying to focus on creating original titles for their own company, and that's where games like Zero Wing came in and Truxton and all those. So at that point, they ended up filing for bankruptcy, unfortunately, back in '94. But all the developers, like the entire staff, split apart, and they ended up doing all these very spin-off studios, development studios like Cave, Aiding, Gazelle, and Takumi Corporation. So probably the most well-known of those is Cave. Has made some phenomenal shooters over the years. They really took all the things that they learned from their past as Toaplan and kind of like improved upon it. So it's going to be really interesting to dive into these tracks. I'd love to do an episode where we like compare them to like later stuff that Cave did. That'd be pretty cool too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because they've some of the Cave games have really great soundtracks as well. So we want to thank Sega Retro for this information. SegaRetro.org. That's where we got it. So there's not a ton of information on Toaplan out there. Unfortunately, they're a very underappreciated developer, so we wanted to really highlight some of their stuff. Regarding the track that we opened with, that was from Zero Wing on the Sega Genesis, and that came out in 1989, and that was Introduction, or Prologue, if you will, Part 1. And that was composed by Tatsuya Uemura, Masahiro Yuge, and Toshiaki Tomizawa, who we will talk about all throughout this episode, so we will not dive too deep right now. But one of my absolute favorite parts of music. I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan, and anything with galloping bass I love. So the galloping bass here, that it's just kind of rolling throughout the entire track.
It's used with such good effect.
Yeah, and like those drums are just so killer. They're so just punchy. I feel like the drums just beat the crap out of you, just the entire time. And it's got a little bit of progressive kind of feel to it as far as the timing goes on the snares.
Yeah, I can do that.
But I love this track. It was good in the All Your Bass Are Belong to Us kind of meme joke, and it really kind of rings true to just setting up this epic probably like more so epic feeling than the actual game itself.
Yeah, I mean the opening to this game is meant to be very dramatic. And
very cinematic.
So, yeah,
right.
and I think the song that they put together really captures the feeling of what's going on in this opening. Like, it's very intense in the beginning when Katz is threatening everyone and saying that all of their base belongs to him.
Ha ha ha. Yes.
And then by the time it gets to the point where Captain is you move Zig for great justice and all that, it's turned into more of this like less evil in your face and more like, I don't know if hopeful is the right word, but that's sort of the first thing that comes to mind.
No, definitely.
It brightens up a lot.
Right towards that end when it rolls through to kind of like right before the loop. The synths are very pronounced here. They sound like it's hard to explain, but it's like the composers really kind of like have a unique style, and you'll tend to notice when you listen to specific composers that depending on the sound drivers that they're working with, or depending on the sound fonts, if you will, I don't know, it kind of sounds like not off key here, but it sounds like they really liked to bend notes quite a bit.
Yes. I mean that whole like back half of the song. Yeah. I mean the guitar licks.
Yeah. They're playing. It's almost like country, like.
A little bit. I mean, it's overdriven a bit, and with the galloping bass, it's just like
it's killer.
Yeah, it really is.
Definitely.
It's such a fun song.
Absolutely. So you got a chance to hear a song that was just Toaplan in their heyday, and now you're going to hear a track that Justin picked, which definitely seems a lot more minimalist, a lot more simplistic sounding, and I think that's just due to the nature of the era in which it came out. What do you got for us for our first track?
So the track I have coming up is called Area 41 to 50, and that's from 1986's arcade release named Slap Fight. And this is composed by Masahiro Yuge.
Cool.
Welcome back. Thank you for listening. That was Areas 41 to 50 from 1986's arcade release Slap Fight by Masahiro Yuge.
Yes. What do you think of this one?
Well, I thought it was a really interesting track, particularly for the sound that it has. It reminded me of the original Legend of Zelda.
Okay.
Like the dungeon theme.
Yes, yeah.
Like as soon as it came on, I was like, wow, that's a very familiar sound font. Or at least the sound of it.
My wife hates that song. The Legend of Zelda dungeon theme.
I can't argue with her. It's very repetitive.
It is extremely repetitive, and just like anytime that I want to like talk to her about like video game music, I'll be like, hey, we all know. Her name's Patty. I'll be like, oh, we all know Patty's favorite song of all time is the Legend of Zelda dungeon theme, and she's like, I hate that damn song. She just gets so angry.
And that's one of the things that I like about this song is it sounds like that to start off, and then it goes to interesting places. So
I like songs that piss your wife off.
I mean, that's true too.
Right.
But you mentioned before the break that the song itself was a little bit more minimalist, especially compared to some of the stuff that we're going to hear later.
It sounds like something out of a Master System game.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Just due to the lack of percussion,
Yeah.
and bass, of course.
So yeah, and there's a lack of a variety of instruments, but one of the things that I find particularly sort of engaging about this piece is that they use key changes to really good dramatic effect. I mean, there's I lost count of the number of times they changed key.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting going from like what started off as sort of like, I'm pretty sure it starts off in a minor key because that's the same way that the Zelda song starts. But it keeps going back and forth between minor and major, and they keep switching the actual key that it's in.
Yeah. The game, I mean, it's more of a space shooter. Yeah. You assume the role of something called Alcon, and the game is actually called Alcon.
Yes.
We unfortunately weren't able to get this one loaded on MAME to play it. It's published by Taito. It's developed by Toaplan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's like you're fighting as this fighter pilot in a starfighter, and you're trying to stop these invaders from taking over the planet Theon. It's an alien planet. So, but yeah, I think I get what you're talking about though with the music, because it sounds almost as if like it's very frantic sounding.
Yep.
And I definitely noticed the time signature changes throughout the track. It almost sounds like a record skipping at points, because like da-dan, and then I think you're talking about when it goes into the major key, when it sounds a little bit more hopeful towards the end.
Yes.
Like it definitely has that more uplifting vibe to it, but still in the background you've got that more like minor tone. So
the bass of it still sort of stays the same throughout most of the song.
This one grew on me. I listening to this track, it definitely was the type of track where the first time I heard it I didn't like it, and then as I started going back and listening to it more and more, I was like, this is pretty interesting. Like it's pretty cool track.
Yeah, I mean like I said, that's the reason that I picked it. And again, it seems very minimalist, but
it makes you think.
Yeah, the more you listen to it, sort of like the more you find, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize the song made me feel like that. Okay.
Yeah.
But
so yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a Xevious clone in a lot of ways. So it's it's a very basic shooter in a lot of ways, and the game was ported to a bunch of other places. It was ported to I believe the Mega Drive, and for that the soundtrack was arranged by Yuzo Koshiro, who's one of my favorite composers, definitely. So pretty interesting stuff. But it was ported to a couple 8-bit, like the home computer scene, stuff like the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC. Toaplan games were ported left and right. They love to port their games to various different formats. There's even a version on the Atari ST, so that'll tell you that Toaplan loves to port their stuff, and you can't really blame them. The more systems that something is on, the better chance you'll have of somebody playing your game.
Exactly, you get more exposure, and I mean this was still early, sort of in their career in 1986. So they may still be trying to get as much exposure as they can possibly get. Throw it all over the place.
Yeah, and since they had paired with Taito, as we said before, they became a contractor of theirs. So they're basically, Taito was like, hey, you got to do this game, or we're going to have you make this game, and put it out there and see, it's kind of like fishing. You throw your bait out there, see who bites. So people were obviously biting, because it led to another arcade game called Guardian, which we're going to hear in just a minute. But I wanted to touch on Masahiro Yuge. So Masahiro Yuge worked on a couple other games for Toaplan, stuff like Grindstormer, Tatsujin, which I believe is actually Truxton. That's the name for it, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Kyoku Tiger and Truxton 2, Alcon, which we just played, Zero Wing, Fire Shark, Twin Cobra, Sky Shark, Knuckle Bash, and Guardian, of course. So yeah, definitely some interesting stuff. So now Guardian, as far as I know, only has one composer, so it's interesting that they mentioned Masahiro Yuge. This track is composed by Osamu Ohta, and the track is called Boss, and it's off of the arcade release of Guardian in 1986. Let's give it a listen. on XVGM Radio. That was Guardian, and that was in the arcade. 1986 was the year of release. That track was the boss theme, and that was by Osamu Ohta. So Guardian's an upright arcade machine, and you play as this like robot dude, and you're going through like all these different like levels. Like there's an Egyptian level, there's levels where you go through the forest, there's levels in space, and you're going through just punching the crap out of like, you know, rhinos and robots and like all sorts of random stuff.
Yeah, different like just weird enemies. Like there was a dragon wielding a sword. Yeah, it's all over the place.
Apparently, you're going through a bunch of different planets. There's planets like the Night Spider, Ice Ancient, the Green Forest, the Sand Scorpion, the Enemy Base, and Next Future, which is a little backwards. You'd think it'd be like Future Next, but I don't know. Whatever.
No, it's not this future. It's the next future.
It's the next future. Ah, okay, that makes sense. So I really love this track, and it really reminds me out of some, again, very simplistic sounding in the sense that it didn't have a lot going on with it in terms of instrumentation. There was barely any drums, if at all, but it's weird because when there's a lack of drums like this, especially on Master System games, I'll like fill in drums on my own.
In your head?
Yeah, in my head. So that's kind of what I did here. But I really dig the kind of like synth pop, synthy kind of like bass line, almost like polka, like it definitely sounded like something from the 80s. I mean, like like synth pop dance type music. So I don't know, I dig that kind of music personally. I really like it, so I was really feeling that. And then I just love the overall melody. It's very uplifting, but at the same time very similar to other Master System games, very like somber. So
yeah,
I don't know. What do you think about this one?
I actually don't have a ton of thoughts on it. It's a good little ditty. But overall, I thought like sort of along the same lines as what you were saying. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot going on there. Minimalist, like you say.
Yeah.
But the main melody, I didn't find it driving, but it was sort of uplifting. It makes sense is I guess the best thing that I can say for it. Like it's bouncy and it's fun, and I feel like it helps to sort of keep things moving along. It's like the bass line kept it going and was, you know, one of a few pieces of the song, but outside of that, the main melody, it wasn't super complex or anything, but it was sort of just enough to keep you there and say, oh, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, it kind of elevates as well, like right after that main like da 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 da, and I love that the upbeat on that ends right there where it's like dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
it's like it really enunciates that last little bit right before it goes into the beginning of the melody. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I
was personally liking it quite a bit, but I can understand why some people would kind of feel like it's a little too minimal. But
I don't think it's too minimal. It didn't sort of grab me in the way some of the other tracks that you're gonna play later are really like
gripping.
Yes, gripping, totally gripping.
Yes.
But it's not a bad track by any means. It just didn't draw me in as much as I sort of hoped it would, especially after seeing how wacky the gameplay looked.
Yes, definitely. So Osamu Ohta joined Toaplan in 1984, and he was working both as a composer and programmer, which makes sense because back then composers were pretty much also they needed programming language to be able to do what they were doing.
Oh yeah. In order to do the music, you basically had to program the sound chip.
Right.
Yep.
So he's labeled as an assistant for Guardian, which I guess also has the name Get Star.
Yes.
He also worked for Taito after Toaplan shut down, but he didn't do really any kind of music for any other titles.
Yeah.
So just working behind the scenes, if you will. He's credited for Tatsujin, Outzone, Snow Brothers, Toaplan, Shooting Chronicle, and Toaplan Arcade Sound Digital Collection. These are all CDs or compositions that have made it onto disc. So the discography that we're reading off of is like soundtracks that he's been put on. So there's not a ton of information about Osamu Ohta. Because he's labeled as an assistant, I'm assuming that the primary composer could have been Masahiro Yuge, who we just talked about. So that's a good possibility.
Yeah, I mean, there are sort of only a handful of composers in the Toaplan.
Toaplan verse.
Their own sort of group of people. So,
yep.
I mean, if we're going to end up talking about the same people over and over, and I mean,
pretty much.
Yeah, they had some really good stuff. So
yeah,
there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah. So now we're going to move from Guardian, which is an arcade title, to a downport of a game that also came out on many different systems. What do we have next?
So the next game is Twin Cobra, which was originally an arcade game, I believe, and then they ported it to different systems. This is the NES downport from 1987. The song is Tsugaru by Tatsuya Uemura. Welcome back again. Thank you for listening to XVGM Radio. That was Tsugaru off of 1987's NES Twin Cobra. And that was by Tatsuya Uemura.
Yes, I was very surprised with this track because initially I didn't like it as much as the Genesis version, which that's my first experience with the game. And that it's interesting because the track initially I was like not liking it at all. Within the first maybe 10 seconds or so, I was completely turned off by the track, and that's mainly because it sounded like one of those really late 90s, early 2000s cell phone ringtones.
Yes.
That's something you'd either wake up to back then, or your friend would call you and you'd be like, oh, hold on, I gotta take this, Or it sounds like something that, if you were playing Snake, it sounds like something where, if you beat all the levels in Snake or something that eventually you would hear that song. So, but then it kicks into this part of the track where it's like, dun 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 dun, and it's a lot more layered at that point. Yep. And then it goes back to the original intro part, and I'm like, whatever. But then around 40 seconds or so, it kicks into this ultra awesome guitar solo, this squeedly meedly,
the arpeggios.
Yeah, oh my goodness, that was awesome. So that won me over on the track. So it's interesting how a track can kind of take form and kind of like change throughout the listening experience.
Agreed. That's actually sort of one of the reasons that I picked the song. I mean, if I wanted to go for just a straight up awesome song, which I kind of did, I would have gone with the Genesis version.
Yes.
Like you said, the Genesis version of the song is like the Genesis version of this game is far superior. Way
better.
But this song, like you said, I actually had a very similar experience. Like the opening of the song is kind of grating and a little bit like and then it picks up a bit and then it kind of backs off, and at one point it gets into these really, really high notes that are almost like making my ears bleed. And then like you said, it gets into the arpeggios and it's just like, where did this come from? And on the NES, it's I mean, when you think about the hardware that it's on, all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's the NES and this is actually kind of impressive. Again, a song with not a whole lot, like kind of minimalist, and no real drums or anything going on, but all just out of nowhere, this like awesome arpeggios and guitar solo comes out of nowhere, and it was just like, okay, I can get behind this song. But yeah, the game itself, Twin Cobra, also known as Kyoku Tiger in Japan, it's a helicopter shmup. So if you're familiar with the shmup genre, I mean, you've got things in front of you flying, things on the ground. Usually, in some of the more sophisticated games of that type, you can only hit the things on the ground by dropping bombs. You can hit the things in the air by shooting them. In this one, they don't really care. You can shoot the tanks, you can shoot the other helicopters, and you can blow everything up with your bombs.
So, regarding the composer, I actually want to clarify something regarding Tatsuya Uemura, because I was not able to find like some sources say that Tatsuya Uemura did the composition for this, specifically like Wikipedia, but Wikipedia has often been wrong, unfortunately, regarding this. So, and other games too, like if you look up composer information on Wikipedia, there's a really good chance that it's wrong. This is also labeled in other sources on the web to Takahiko Nagaya. Takahiko Nagaya was labeled as the audio, sound, and programmer on Twin Cobra for the NES version specifically. So when you look up, like, for example, the Genesis version, the music arranger on that was Hiroto Kano, also known as Raika no Papa. So I'm not really 100% sold that Tatsuya Uemura worked on this one, in all honesty. I really do think that it was...
Yeah, Takahiko Nagaya.
Yeah.
Taking a look at... I mean, there's a couple different sites that you can go looking for the stuff on, and I mean, the one that we used the most didn't have a whole lot of information, but VGMrips.net actually has some pretty solid info and does label Takahiko Nagaya specifically as the composer for the NES version.
Okay, cool. So that's a instant clarification just to let everybody know that it was not Tatsuya Uemura. So that's good. We kind of solved that mystery. So lesson learned, never trust Wikipedia.
Apologies for the misinformation.
Yes. So Takahiko Nagaya worked on Raiden in 1991 as a programmer, as well as Acrobat Mission in 1992, and that was unfortunately his final game as a programmer. So he's mainly done programming, only had 3 games to his name, so not too much, but still very impressed with this track. I think it's pretty good. But now you've got another track for us that is actually on the Genesis. So what do we have next?
That is true. So next up, we're going to hear Hope, Stage 3, from 1989's Genesis release Truxton. And this is by Masahiro Yuge as well.
Truxton!
Welcome back. That was Hope Stage 3 from 1989's Genesis release of Truxton, and that was by Masahiro Yuge.
That was a voyage, I will say. That was interesting. The beginning, it sounds, again, like almost like a CD skipping, like dun, 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 dun. And then it kicks into this like almost jazz piano kind of vibe to it, you know? I don't know. I personally have mixed feelings on this one because I don't like that super repetitive like but then when it goes into that jazz piano, I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. It's kind of dancey a little bit, kind of a little bit hopeful sounding, but not too much. I think it's more like I get a flying sense.
Yeah,
you know,
which makes sense considering the game.
Yeah,
I would agree with a lot of what you said. So the song itself, I feel not in a bad way that it does this, but I feel like it feels like any other space-based shmup level. Like it feels almost like a Gradius or almost like an R-Type.
Okay. Just
the quality and the spirit of the song. But then, like partway through, closer to the end of the loop, it does this thing with the horns. And I mean, if you took the bass line out of it, it would almost sound like something out of Gauntlet.
Okay.
Like almost a medieval-y vibe.
Okay. I get where you're coming from with that. Yeah, it's got kind of like a, I don't know. It's got a certain sound to it that almost sounds like Gauntlet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's really no other way to put it like Gauntlet. Yeah, it sounds very American. As far as the composition itself goes, like the entire thing, it doesn't sound like that, you know, more Japanese action music style.
Yeah, that's true.
That a lot of developers go for and stuff like Zero Wing and whatnot. So, Truxton was originally released on arcade, and then it did get ported to the Genesis and the Mega Drive and also the PC Engine. I do not believe it came out on the TurboGrafx, so it's just exclusive to Japan. Yeah. It's a space shooter, but it's interesting because I feel like the weapons in this game were so overpowered at times, and because they cover such a large range, especially when you get the lightning and you power up the lightning, it's like undefeatable. Yeah,
you have like these three shots that go like one off to the front of you and then two off diagonally from the sides, and it's just they're also homing. So as long as you're holding the button down, they're locking on to whatever is nearby. And for most of the piddly enemies, it's like they're just wiped, they're gone. And it gives you the sense of power, and then all of a sudden you get to an enemy that can actually stand up to it, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. And that's when the game kind of challenges you. But we found ourselves kind of like, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I at least found myself to be really enjoying it, but I felt like, especially graphically, I don't know, I wasn't really that impressed. It kind of felt a little lacking. It kind of felt a little flat, kind of like very generic looking in a lot of ways.
I would definitely say that there are other games, even from this era on the Genesis, that did more with, you know, the colors and the graphics and stuff you could do. I mean, this game, it feels like it was only slightly above 8-bit as far as what you were looking at. It definitely looked better than what I think I would see on the NES if they tried to downport it. But at the same time, it didn't feel truly 16-bit.
Yeah, I mean, that could be because, I mean, especially since it got ported to the PC Engine. The PC Engine's kind of like a step down in some ways to the Genesis, and in other ways it's like a step up. So, but what I was going to say is that it for a vertical shooter, there were times where I didn't realize what I was going through for the background was something that, like, I was trying to avoid stuff in the background, but I could have just went right through it. Which I didn't realize until I thought I made a mistake, and then I was like, oh, whew, wow, okay, so you can move all around the entire map. There's nothing, you know, like in some games like Silver Surfer, for example, on the NES, you can't move. You have to move between certain areas, and it's very difficult to tell what's in the foreground, what's in the background. And in Truxton, I kind of got that same feeling a little bit. But yeah, this one's called Tatsujin in Japan. Did you like the game itself? You thought it was fun?
It was a fairly fun vertical scrolling shmup. I don't play a ton of them, but especially for how overpowered the weapons feel sometimes, it was a lot of fun for that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Once again, this was composed by Masahiro Yuge, who we already talked about. Worked on Tiger Hele in '86. Was a music arranger for that, and then also Hellfire in 1990. Zeroing in 91, Grindstormer in 93, Gigawing in 1999, which I believe came out in arcade and Dreamcast, and then Mars Matrix was the final audio work that he did, and he was sound programmer on that in 2000. So he did some design work for games like Kururin in 2001, and then Kururin Squash in 2004. I believe those are puzzle games, if I recall. There's one for the Game Boy Advance, which is really good, and that might be Kururin. So yeah, those are like fun little like balance type games. Yeah. So he's a pretty solid composer. I like most of the work that he's done, so we'll be talking about him throughout the episode.
Cool.
Yeah.
And hey, looks like we have another call-in.
This one,
should we?
Yeah, looks like we have a call coming in from space. Weird. Yeah, let's take a listen. Caller, you're on the air.
This is Katz. Ha ha ha. How are you, gentlemen? Am I radio star now? Request best song on podcast. I will going to suggest. Play stage 1, Natols from Zero Wing. Best game for great justice.
I'm very lost, but I think I am hearing you right. It sounds like he wants to hear another track from Zero Wing. This is stage 1, Natols. So yeah, I guess we'll give it a listen. This one's on the Sega Genesis for the 1989 release, again by Tatsuya Uemura, Masahiro Yuge, Toshiaki Tomizawa, and I got nothing else. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Crazy Cats from Crazy Cat Space Corporeum. Probably remember I bad guy once time. Better have I begun to fury. Life changed for great justice. Tired of my story? Are you a real human people? Things happen and carve for you. Wanna buy? Space Corporeum is best in show. Best sale for every person in existence. Credit cheap. A-OK partner. Selling line of the top Zig space combat vehicle just for everybody. No zenny down. Interest none for all the 6 months. Work out best deal of lifetime. Come on down and shine. Crazy Cat's gonna make you celebrity plus ultra for all time.
Crazy Cat Space Carporium. Help us move Zig for great justice.
You're listening to XVGM Radio.
Oh man, Zero Wing. I love that track. That was Zero Wing for the Sega Genesis, the 1989 release. That was Stage 1 Natols. It's also called Open Your Eyes. Oh. That's the, I guess, the official name for the song. It's again composed and arranged by Tatsuya Uemura, Masahiro Yuge, Toshiaki Tomizawa. I will say that this is just such a hard-hitting soundtrack in general. It's strange because this track in and of itself is very powerful. You've got such driving drums and bass kind of piloting the entire track as you're listening to it. And then you've got these synths that kind of hang out in the background, kind of like pop in whenever you're like da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na. It's got like a call and answer kind of thing, like da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. It kind of goes back and forth like that. Yeah. And then it's got this more like melodic kind of like da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, da-na, and it's very full and rich sounding, but at the same time, it's almost, the synths make it seem almost like very empty, and it just sounds at points like just like a drum and bass machine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I mean the drums are like the heart and soul of that little song.
Absolutely.
I mean, you were going wild.
Oh yeah. I love drum. I've played drums through like middle school and high school, and like I've played on drum sets and stuff, so I just really love drums. So it's always awesome to hear really rich sounding, sharp, crunchy, snappy drums. The percussion is so important in Mega Drive titles and Genesis games, so it's really cool to see a track like this improve upon the arcade version even more so. You know, the Yamaha chip that they use in the Genesis really kind of sounds a lot better than the arcade version that it's based on. The arcade version, don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but I really think that this version just blows it out of the water, specifically with the drums, the way that the drums sound, and just the entire track in general.
Yeah, I would say they definitely got the drum sound right. They got a lot of the sounds in that right. I shouldn't say a lot. I can't name anything in that song that didn't sound really, really well put together.
Right.
I mean, like you said, the entire soundtrack for this game is actually really, really good.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say like, oh, you know, what's a good track from Zero Wing? Just listen to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do like those synths and that call and response type thing that you were talking about. It feels very playful in this song, and it's a good first stage song at that, because I mean you're already in the game. You're flying your ship horizontally through everything, and
the game itself is really good. Yeah, like it's actually a really good shooter.
Memes aside,
aside from the ridiculous like English translation, which is just really butchered English that they put on the US or on the European cart. So this game actually never saw a release in the US.
That's right. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the arcade version did come out in the United States, but that was published by Williams Entertainment. And because of that, Williams Entertainment didn't publish the Genesis version or any home port version of this game stateside. I guess there was some kind of like issue with working with Williams Entertainment where they were like, hey, we'll do the arcade, but we're not allowing you to do anything else. We want the arcade to be exclusive. Part of the reason for that, I think, is one, because the Genesis version is way better than the arcade version in my opinion, and because of that, I think that if people played the arcade version first and then let's say they played the Genesis version then they played the arcade version, they would just buy the Genesis game. So it's kind of hurting Williams to release a superior version of the game on the Genesis versus the arcade, because they want people. Williams was primarily a arcade and pinball based company. They wanted people to go to the arcade and play their games and spend money there instead of bringing it home. And it wasn't really until like Mortal Kombat, which came out several years later, that Williams kind of, was okay with this sort of thing. So, but it's a horizontal side-scrolling shooter. You're playing as a Zig spaceship fighter, and it's this little tiny bug spaceship dude, and he has a homing beam that he can use to like grab smaller enemies, and you could use those as like a shield, or you could shoot them out at other enemies, and then you have like a regular blaster sort of thing that you can power up with weapons that are very similar to Truxton, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the homing missiles, you've got the lightning laser shot, kind of, and then you've got like a machine
regular
gun.
pea shooter. Oh,
Yeah,
the
machine
gun too.
Yep. So, but regarding zeroing, the plot is something. It's basically about it takes place in the year 2101, and it's right after the United Nations has signed this peace treaty with CATS, who is an alien cybernetic organism. CATS takes over all these like colonies in Japan and ends up showing up on everybody's computer monitors, and he's like, you know, hey, I'm going to be taking over, like, you'll never defeat me. Some of the more memorable lines in English, like, all your base are belong to us. The accurate translation in Japan should have been, with the cooperation of Federation forces, CATS have taken over all your bases.
Huh.
So that should have been what he was trying to say. One of my favorite lines is, "You have no chance to survive. Make your time," which really means treasure what little time remains in your lives.
Oof.
So, CATS is evil, man.
Yeah.
But like, it's always funny to me to hear like properly English translated words that should have been, because like, if we go through this, like, instead of somebody set up us the bomb, it should have been, it seems someone planted explosives on board. And then the communication staff says he goes, main screen turn on. And then it's you. Like, he's like, it's you. Like, of course it's you. So that's kind of how the English breaks down. It's just goofy. I don't know. I love it. So real quick about the composers. So Tatsuya Uemura, who we are finally going to be able to talk about, he worked on Tiger Heli in 1985, did the music and sound for that, Hellfire in 1990, Zero Wing in 91, and Snow Brothers, Nick and Tom, in 1991. He did I believe the Game Boy version, but don't quote me on that. Either that or the arcade version. There's a whole bunch of different versions on that game. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the episode. What about Toshiaki Tomizawa?
So for audio, the only credit that I'm seeing here is Zero Wing.
Yep.
There's a number of special thanks and special assistants, but he did some programming on Donpachi in 1995. I think that's
Dodonpachi, yeah.
Yeah, what's the name of the Cave?
Yeah.
It was done by Cave.
Yep.
And then he was a music producer on Espgaluda in 2004. So what do we got coming up next then?
Next we have another track on the Genesis. This is Hellfire, which we just mentioned previously. It's a 1990 release. This track is Stage 6 Last Dance. It's a dancey little number. It's by Tatsuya Uemura and Masahiro Yuge.
Let's do it.
All right, you have returned to XVGM Radio. That was Hellfire, the Sega Genesis release. That was the 1990 track. Stage 6, Last Dance was the name of the song, and that was Tatsuya Uemura and Masahiro Yuge. I love this track. Love it to pieces. It is such an awesome, like, swing rockabilly number. Like, it's got, like, West Side Story, like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I love it. It's awesome. It's got, like, a musical vibe to it, something you would hear in, like, a musical like West Side Story, kind of. I'm just expecting, like, a bunch of, like, spaceships with hands, like following, like, but I don't know. What did you think of this one?
So this track, the more I listened to it, the more it sort of grew on me. But the first time I listened to this track, I hated it.
Really? Okay.
And to be fair, the melody, the music is actually like it's well composed.
Yeah.
What I hated about it, and still kind of do.
Yeah.
Is the sound font that they use.
Okay. Is it that, especially that beginning part where it's like like?
So yes and no.
Okay.
I'm not always a big fan of the Genesis.
Okay.
And this is the example of the sounds that I don't like from a Genesis.
I believe the word that you're looking for is twarmpy.
Oh my god!
Twarmpy.
It is twarmpy.
Yes.
So
yes.
For one, the drums sound very muddy, and like it doesn't sound like somebody hitting a bass drum. It sounds like somebody threw a bass drum in the mud, literally. And then the other thing that I want to talk to these people and ask them why in this game Hellfire they thought a harpsichord was an appropriate instrument. Because there are some very clear parts. I'm trying to figure out like what that twarmpy noise is, and then it got sort of its own solo.
Oh, you're talking about the part where it's like dun da 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 dun dun dun.
So the harpsichord sound, or I'm not sure if that's what it actually is, but that's all I can think of now.
Yeah.
Because it just came to me, but
it got its own solo.
Yeah, but it sounds kind of like a string being plucked.
Yeah.
Really hard, and then it almost cuts off immediately. And it's as soon as my brain went harpsichord, I was like, I can't. What are you doing?
I personally was a bigger fan of the rhythm than the lead. It's interesting because when you go back and listen to the lead, it does stand out when you actually listen to it, but otherwise it kind of disappears in the background. That rhythm is just so catchy. It's so groovy. It's so fun. The rhythm
is really good, and it is really driving. It's one of the things that actually kept me with the songs. But it's just the actual, like the sounds that were used. Like you come from, especially coming off that zeroing track.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so good. It's so clear.
The drums are a lot weaker here. Yes. I agree. I think that what they tried to do is they tried to make the drums sound more in line with what the bass sounds like.
Okay.
So the bass that you heard in Zeroing basically is the drums that you hear in Hellfire.
Okay.
That's how I interpreted it personally, but I just love that main rhythm, that melody, that cadence. It's just really bouncy, very fun sounding. And a lot of other tracks on this, you would actually probably really like the first track.
When we played it, the first
Captain
song
Lancer
was actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's the name of the track, is Captain Lancer, and that stage 1, it's more in line with Zeroing. And that's the thing about Zeroing and Hellfire, is that their soundtracks, for the most part, like, it's either hit or miss. Like, there's tracks on Zeroing's soundtrack that I'm like,
That's fair.
And same thing on Hellfire. There's tracks on Hellfire that I'm like, But for the most part, most of the songs that I played, or that I would love to play on this podcast, are the best songs out of Zeroing and the best songs out of Hellfire.
Fair.
In my opinion, this is one of the better songs on the Hellfire soundtrack.
That's fair. And I mean, what you're saying in the beginning, where it sounds kind of like you come out of a musical.
Yeah,
I can see that too, and especially when I just re-looking at the name of the song is called Stage 6, Last Dance.
Right.
So
it's got that dance vibe to it. Yeah,
I could feel it on that.
Yeah. And of course, talking about that beginning part, I fully agree. I fully agree with you that the beginning of the song, it sounds off key. That the it's not until that swing rhythm that comes in, that's when the track starts for me. Yeah, exactly.
All the bananas.
banana. Oh man.
So what about the game itself?
The game is great. I really love the game. So it's another horizontal side scroller shooter, and this time you're piloting this ship that has a constantly rotating turret.
That's right. I remember this now.
The animation's really good.
I was very impressed with the look of this game, and the gameplay was really good too.
Yeah.
Remembering it now, the opening theme, like when you first boot it up, also had some of those thwarmpy sounds to them. Because I remember when you booted it up, my first thought was, oh God, what's that sound? But you're right about the track of the first level was actually really good.
It was good, yeah.
The animation was very surprising.
Yeah. The animation on the turret as it's rotating around, like the barrel of the gun, it's rotating constantly while you're going, and you're getting enemies thrown at you at a pretty rapid rate for the most part. But the way that this game plays is the whole like gimmick is that you can change out your you could rotate out your turret on a whim, so you can have one shooting in front of you. If you change it, you could have one shooting in back of you instead. You can have one shooting up and down together, like at the same time. And then my favorite was the corner one, which shoots at all four corners of your ship. And, you're kind of bouncing back and forth while playing this to determine which one is the best depending on which enemy you're facing off against. So it's really very well done, and it's a really addictive game. It's hard as balls, but it's a really good game. So I don't know, you were having fun with it too, right?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. The enemies were fairly interesting. The patterns were cool. The power-ups were really neat. Like as you upgrade your ship, you actually, like, the animation changes because the barrels change. Rotating around. So it was definitely a lot of fun, and the challenge was definitely in determining which gun you needed for anyone's situation. Like, you can't really just go through the game. I mean, I'm sure somebody's done it, but you can't really just go through the game just using the forward gun.
Right, exactly. It's impossible. You really got to use that mechanic to advance in the game. So, well, it looks like we're getting another call in. Actually, let's take it.
Yeah. Hey, callers, you're on the air with XVGM Radio.
Hey, dude. This is Nick. And Tom. And we're the Snow Brothers. We want to dedicate a song to the loves of our lives, the princesses. We want to know if you could play stage 1 from our game.
Okay, sure. What are their names, the princesses?
I don't know, man. They never told us, but just looking at them, I'd say one is named Poochie Poochie, and the other is Pootie Pootie.
How do you know that based on their looks?
Dude, you'd know if you saw them, bro.
Okay, alright, well, let's hear a game that I love very near and dear to me personally. This is Snow Brothers on the NES. This is the 1990 release. This is Stage 1. It's by Osamu Ohta, Tatsuya Uemura, and Mikiko Suzuki. Welcome back to the podcast. That was Snow Brothers on the NES. That came out in 1990, and that was Stage 1 by Osamu Ohta, Tatsuya Uemura, and Mikiko Suzuki. That was a game that was published by Capcom on the NES, actually. Yeah, but it was developed by Toaplan. I love this game. It is one of my childhood favorites, and I'll tell you right now, it's better than Bubble Bobble. What? I'm going there. I don't care.
So considering I only played it for the first time the other day, I would agree. I enjoyed Bubble Bobble, but
yeah,
that Snow Brothers was just different.
Yeah.
It was the gameplay was similar enough that it might seem derivative, but
yeah.
I would probably actually play that again over Bubble Bobble. It was really cute, and the music was really fun.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong, Bubble Bobble's fun. But it's fun to a point. Like, you play 10 levels of Bubble Bobble and you're like, I'm done. Meanwhile, Snow Brothers, we had to struggle to put it down.
Yeah.
Because we were up to, like, I think, like level 30 or something like that?
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere either 20 or 30.
Something like that.
It was 30.
I mean, the levels go by really quick, so it's not like it's that big of a chore. But Snow Brothers is a game where you play as these guys who you just heard from, who called into the podcast, Nick and Tom. They are princes in their land. And by the way, the story for this is exclusive to, from what I understand, it's exclusive to the NES, or at least in terms of showcasing the story. There's a Mega Drive or Japanese version. There's a Sega Genesis version that came out as well, but it doesn't. I don't believe that it has that much. I think it's got a different opening story. So it exists, but it is different. But I just really love the Capcom sound here, kind of like the arrangement. It's just classic Capcom style, but it also kind of has its own unique flavor too regarding the track. But yeah, gameplay wise, you're going through the game as these two Snow Brothers, and they're trying to defeat a demon named King Scorch, who basically turns these once human princes into snow people. And so they have the power to turn their enemies into snow, like snowballs.
Yeah.
And then you can like launch those, and it's super fun.
Yeah, you basically throw snow at things, and then you roll them up into a big ball, and then you roll them around and blow them up.
Yeah, like you could throw the snowball, and it kind of bounces you all over the place like a pinball really fast. Yeah. It's super fun.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it was a lot of fun. Again, having just played it for the first time the other night, I didn't know what I was getting into. But it was just very strange. I'd never seen the game before. I'd never heard of it before. So
it goes for bonkers money online, unfortunately. Like, if you find the game, it's like a $200 game or something like that.
Lord.
It's so ridiculous. And it's such a shame. I mean, I have this on my flash car, on my EverDrive.
Right.
But I would love to own a physical copy of this, like an actual, like real, legit copy of it, because it really is one of my favorite games on the NES. I love Snow Brothers. So I want to check out the Genesis version too, because apparently, you're trying to rescue these princesses, Pooty Pooty and Poochie Poochie, but you end up switching as them on the Genesis version after the first initial 50 levels. I guess there's 20 levels additional added on to that. And
you play as the princesses?
Yeah, you could switch to play as the princesses, so that's kind of neat.
That is really neat.
Yeah.
So I guess you save them and then you go do some more ass kicking.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty cool. So,
nice.
What do you think of the track itself?
The track itself was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's very
catchy.
Very catchy. Very very upbeat, and I can't remember it anymore. There's a part in there that reminded me of another song, which is funny because the track that was playing while we were playing had a bit that sounded like something else. If I remember correctly, it was like the da na 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 na.
Yeah. I have a lot of really warm memories of making song lyrics to the Bubble Bobble theme. I did this with a friend of mine, and we had this whole scheme. This is slightly PG-13, but we came up with this idea that Mr. T will have intercourse with you as for free. And the lyrics are just like talking about Mr. T.
Oh my god!
Having intercourse with you for free. Like da 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 da, like Mr. T, something for free, which I can't really say, but that's I don't know why we came up with this goofy lyrics, but now I want to do it with the Snow Brothers with the song. Like I want to come up with my own lyrics. It'd be like, I don't know. I don't really have anything written. I wish I did, because like that'd be really funny. So I don't know. You guys should suggest lyrics for the Snow Brothers.
Oh my god!
Theme song. I don't know.
Write your own songs. Send them in. We'll sing them on the air.
Yeah.
Disclaimer: we won't really sing them on the air.
You can call in and sing them on the air.
There you
like
go.
What you think would be a good Snow Brothers lyrics song. But yeah, so really fun game. Great soundtrack. Go get it if you want to spend a lot of money or just emulate it like everybody else. So yeah, good stuff. Now, we talked about all these other composers except for Mikiko Suzuki. And there's a reason for that. They only worked on this game.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they were the only they may have been the arranger actually from Capcom. That's a possibility.
That's a good call.
Yeah, because I mean Osamu, Ohta, and Tatsuya Uemura composed it, so that's a possibility that Mikiko Suzuki worked on this on an arrangement level. So, but there's no real clue.
Yeah, unfortunately they didn't do anything else, so there's not anything to look at as far as history goes.
But this is a little bit more of a non-shmup, and then we're moving into another game that is also a non-shmup. What do you got for us?
Correct. So this was actually a puzzle game. The next thing we're going to hear is called Quick Junk Sequence from 1991's arcade release of Teki Paki. And this was composed by Tomoaki Takanohashi.
All right, cool. Let's give it a listen.
Welcome back to XVGM Radio. That was Quick Junk Sequence with commas. And that was off of the arcade game Tekipaki that came out in 1991 by Tomoaki Takanohashi.
Oh my god, this song was awesome.
It definitely was.
I just love how grindy it is, and I also really like... I don't normally listen to this type of music, but I got an acid, like, house kind of vibe. Like
I can see that a little.
And then it kind of breaks down where it's like late 80s, early 90s, like house music, kind of, a little bit.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I love this track mostly for the industrial vibe that it gives off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was a Rivet head back in the day, but I did stomp my fair share at goth clubs, and it was like this feels like something that could be remixed only a little bit and would have been heard on that dance floor.
Yeah,
it was super heavy.
Yeah,
very industrial, and that's why I liked it.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. I was really feeling this one. I just love that. That I think is the shining moment of the track. But then it kind of like you get like a false sense of closure at points of the track where like you think that it's over, but it's really not.
Especially right near the end of the loop.
Yeah, right before the end of the loop, you're like, okay. Are those two silly guys coming back or what? But then we tricked you and we played the beginning again. So
yeah, and then it comes right back.
Yeah,
it was a trip.
Yeah. But this is a puzzle game.
Yes.
And a very confusing one at that.
Yeah, it's not like a lot of other puzzle games that I've seen. It at the beginning, when you first start playing, it almost seems like it might be a Tetris type game.
Yep.
Until you realize that all the pieces are the exact same shape.
Right.
And made of multiple different colors. I mean, I tried putting all the blocks down at first and making a line that didn't do anything. I tried matching 3 colors that didn't do anything. You have to match 5 colors or more in order for it to get rid of all the things in the sequence, and you can match left, right, up, down, or diagonal. So that you get a little bit of leeway on it.
I think this game is designed with the intention that people are going to show up at the arcade. They're going to try to play this game. They're going to waste a quarter or two to try to play it. They're going to lose terribly, and then they're just going to go play something else.
I would add, I mean, or at least for the people that I went to the arcades with, all of the first stuff you said, and then they will grab a friend and be like, play this with me.
Right.
Let's see if either one of us actually gets it. And
that's true.
You know, they lose within seconds of each other because it's just really confusing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I wish that there were instructions that came with it, but you know, I'm sure maybe the arcade game itself has kind of like instructions on it, like here's what you have to do to win. But it felt very clunky, and I never really... It's different in Tetris because you feel like you have complete control of the pieces.
Yeah.
I never really felt like that. I felt like I was rotating pieces around, but I never really... I would be like, okay, I want this part to go here, and then the piece would be like, nope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not very clear what direction or how it rotates. And then you've got the added step that pretty much every time a piece lands, the next piece comes slightly quicker. Right. So it's just like the game gets really fast really quickly, it does, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm full. Like, the game ends for you when you fill up the screen. It'll keep, if you reach the top, like in Tetris, it doesn't end. It'll keep giving you pieces until you've completely screwed yourself over and blocked out the whole screen.
Yeah. So, what about this composer? This is a first-timer. We haven't talked about this one.
So yes, this is the first time that we have seen, or heard, rather, anything from Tomoaki Takanohashi. But that's because they only really have 2 things to their credit. From what I'm seeing, they've got Tekipaki in 1991 and Pee and BB's.
That's the U.S. name. The Japanese name is Whoopee!
And that was also in 1991.
That's goofy.
Kind of want to play that game now.
A little bit.
But that's also looks to be a puzzle game.
Right. Now, what's interesting is, depending on what source you go to, Tomoaki Takahashi has different credits. Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP in 2012 they received special thanks on, but other than that, they're not labeled for anything on Moby Games. But if you go to other websites, they are labeled for more stuff. and they're labeled for another game which we're about to talk about, which is another space shooter called Vimana, and that came out in the arcade in 1991. That track is Space High, and it's by Toshiaki Tomizawa and Tomoaki Takanohashi. Alright, you're back, and that is Vimana. And the arcade release, that was 1991, was the year it came out. That was Space High, and that was by Toshiaki Tomizawa and Tomoaki Takanohashi. I love the energy of this one. It's like straight up 80s dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
80s dance, 80s... It's not quite Latin enough to be like 80s freestyle, I would say.
No, it sort of reminds me of like an 80s like rock montage.
Yeah. Yeah, especially that da-na-da-na-na-na.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's straight out of an 80s montage. But like, then when it kicks off that do-do-do-do-do, you know, it's got that bass line that's very popular back in the day in the 80s. That was like the freestyle bass line, you know, freestyle dance music in the 80s.
Yep.
You would hear that, you know, it's almost like polka. In a way.
I mean, from a point where polka was popular and the trend of the day,
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with you. Yeah, like this is sort of like they took the popular bass line of the time.
Yeah.
I feel like that bass line actually permeates a lot of the music that we've been listening to.
True.
So I mean, it's kind of like they have their own. I mean, everybody was using it, but it's very clear that Toaplan was like, this is a good idea. This is a good rhythm for the music that we're trying to put out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, regarding the composers themselves, we talked about Toshiaki Tomizawa previously, as well as Tomoaki Takanohashi, so not really much to say there. But it's pretty clear that these composers, specifically Tomoaki Takanohashi, worked on Tekipaki and Vimana because there's actually a CD out that exists that has both of those on one single soundtrack, which is really cool. And it includes like arrangements too, which is pretty neat. So,
ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, definitely really cool. So this one was, again, another vertical space shooter. It was, I personally enjoyed it. I was having fun with it. You can use like a shield that you can get, and it's different from Truxton's shield, where Truxton's shield is like this skull thing that like shows up and like shows up all around the, it's got like pentagram or whatever and like a skull. But this one's a little different. It's like a ball, like ball shields. So like little balls surround you, these like energy spheres, and you can like shoot them out or use them as protection, and that's kind of like your bomb, if you will, your bomb attack But other than that, you have the ability to either use like a regular shot or like a machine gun shot, which is like, why would you bother using the regular shot? Just use the machine gun shot, you know?
Rapid fire versus
regular.
What do you call it?
Doesn't make any sense. So, but yeah, it's a fairly generic space shooter. I mean, it's definitely one of those ones where you'll die every 5 seconds. So unless you're really good, you did. You were having trouble with this one.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it looked like a lot of fun, but every time I picked up the controller, it was just like, hey, there's too much stuff on the screen, and you're dead.
Yeah,
and you're dead.
Well, what do you think of the track?
The track was great.
Yeah,
it very. Like you said, very 80s. I could totally see, considering the time it came out, we were just coming out of the 80s at that point, so it was still a very popular sound.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like I feel like I could see somebody in leg warmers and neon lights, like dancing to this song.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But no, it's very, 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 very appropriate music for what's going on, and very like driving and fun, and I think you said bouncy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we'll move into our final track of the podcast. What do you got for us?
All right. So the last song you're going to hear tonight is King Bird, also called Boss 2, off of 1993's arcade game Batsugan. And this was composed by Yoshitatsu Sakai.
Cool.
Welcome back to XVGM Radio. That was King Bird, Boss 2, from 1993's arcade release of Batsugan. And that was composed by Yoshitatsu Sakai.
Great way to end the podcast. I love this one.
Yeah, it kind of feels like an ending song almost.
A little bit.
It came out in 1993, so a couple years after the last song that we were talking about having an 80s feel. And this song, I'm not a huge fan of the movie Top Gun, but this song just kind of felt like some of the stuff like from the end of Top Gun. Like,
yeah,
it still felt kind of 80s-ish. I mean,
not quite the credits. I would say it would be more like a danger sequence when, like, the bad guys are like chasing the good guys, that sort of thing. Where they're it's a very heated song.
Yes.
I think it's that like non-stop bass that and then you've got those synth stings with the dun 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 dun. It's super 80s, and but at the same time, it's kind of taking on like a Capcom sound at points.
I could hear that.
Like something out of like a CPS-1 or CPS-2 system. So.
I think what really does it for me in this particular track is they're not bends, the slides.
Yeah.
Where it hits the note and then it just slides. And for a video game, it's a very smooth slide, and it really, I just feel like that's sort of the part of the song that hit home for me.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. I really like the part a little bit later in the song where it's got a little bit more of a groove to it, where it's like do 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 do.
Yeah.
That I really was enjoying quite a bit, and I kind of wanted to see where they were going to go with that, but then they kind of just go to something else that kind of like loop it back to the beginning. So it didn't really go somewhere where I expected it to go, which is really kind of, it's nice to listen to a track and be like, I think they're going to go this way, and then they don't, and then you're like, you got me.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I do like when music surprises you.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So the game itself, we didn't get a chance to play it, but it looks like pretty standard Toaplan shooter fare. It's a vertically scrolling shoot 'em up, and just to briefly go over the story of what you're doing here, it's on a distant planet that's somewhat similar to Earth. There's a takeover that's been set into motion, and somebody's taking over the planet. It's led by the Imperious King Gladebaron the Seventh, and the Imperial Army.
He's no cats.
But the Imperial Army stages multiple coups upon the planet's countries and are successful in less than 2 weeks. That's crazy.
Wow.
But the only forces capable of stopping them and his army are the Skull Hornets, a small squadron of fighter pilots led by the King's son, who utilize the strongest submersible jets the people's science has ever devised. So apparently there are 3 different ships to choose from, different ships with different pilots. So there's Ship A, piloted by Gino and Schneider. It has a simple array of rapid-fire energy beams that spread evenly. The beams become wider and more powerful as you get power-ups. Ship B is piloted by Beltiana and Altino, and that shoots a straight beam of lightning for as long as the fire button is held. Tapping the fire button causes sparks to appear and travel along the beam. And then Ship C is piloted by Iceman and Ulysses, and that is a fairly adaptable ship. Holding the fire button will shoot energy waves straight forward, and if you tap it, it'll fire a spread of projectiles.
Yeah, this also came out on the Sega Saturn as well, and Saturn was known for its like arcade faithful ports, like home ports. So this one probably got a lot of play in Japan. It never came out in the US, but it was a Japan import that you can pick up. But yeah, just your standard shmup with an alien force that's attacking Earth. But I gotta say, this one's really colorful and the graphics are great.
Yeah.
It's more in line with like Raiden, like that style, as far as like a vertical shooter. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
composed by Yoshitatsu Sakai, who has done just a handful of other things. The credits that I'm seeing show Batsugun in 1993, Pretty Soldier Sailor Moon in 1995. They did sound effects for, and then they came back to doing music for Air Gallet in 1996.
I see. Okay, so with Batsugun, I would say that this is probably the closest that we can get as far as like Bullet Hell, like around that time when Bullet Hell was really kind of coming about.
Instead I think of being, this is one of the first ones actually. That felt like a Manic shooter or something like that.
Yeah, Manic or Bullet Hell, right? So, which is basically where there's just bullets everywhere. Like you can fire crazy amounts of bullets, and so I kind of feel like they took what they did with Truxton, where they had wide range of shot, and they kind of like elevated that to be still more in line with a traditional shooter, but have like Bullet Hell style elements here in Batsugun. So this is probably the earliest evidence of where Cave, the developer, was going with their games, because they do mostly Bullet Hell shooters as well, not really like classic shooters. So me personally, I prefer more the classic shooters, but that's just me.
Yeah, Bullet Hell's not my thing. Too much stuff on screen. I can't process it all.
Right.
I'm just done.
Exactly. I'm just, anytime I play a Bullet Hell shooter, I'm like, well, I'm gonna die and die and die and just keep dying. It never feels like I can get really good at the game, and maybe I'm just not nuanced enough and familiar enough with shmups.
I think it takes a certain kind of eye or a certain type of skill to really be good at bullet hells. I mean, I like shooters. I'm really big onto Gradius.
Yep.
But I mean, you put too many things on screen, and if the system isn't lagging and making it easier to play the game, then I don't want to do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's our show. We hope that you guys really enjoyed it and learned a little bit about something as far as Toaplan goes. Unfortunately, they closed their doors in '94, but again, like we said before, they went on to do some great things, some of the developers. So it's pretty cool. So we want to know what you guys think about this episode. What did you think of the tracks? Leave a comment at our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/XVGM Radio.
We are also on Twitter. Tweet at us or follow us at XVGM Radio.
Right. Of course, our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can check out all our episodes, check out our bio, look up some information on us, who we are, what we do, what some of our favorite games are, etc. So, get a little bit of information about us. You can also find links there where you can ask us questions. You can go right to the Facebook group. It's kind of like an overall hub where you'll be able to see kind of everything. So we want you to go there and check that out as well. The Facebook group is more of a community for you to show up, tell us what your favorite track from the episode was, what you learned about Toaplan. If there were some tracks that you didn't like, let us know. We want to know what you thought of the episode and what you think of the podcast as well. Now, Justin, I got to ask, what was your favorite track on this one?
Woof. As ever, woof.
Yes.
I really kind of want to go with one of the zeroing tracks.
Okay.
But because it's sort of so fresh in my head, I'm gonna go with Quick Junk Sequence from Tekipaki.
Yeah.
I'm really feeling the industrial this evening. Mm-hmm. So I will go with that.
It's tough because I want to go with my gut and go with my nostalgia, but I was just so blown away by that Quick Junk Sequence track that I almost want to pick that too. I love the dancey vibe in Hellfire with Stage 6 Last Dance.
Yes.
And Zeroing, I just cannot get enough of that Zeroing soundtrack. So this is a tough one. I would say for long-term purposes, meaning a track that I will constantly go back to, I would go with Zeroing.
That's fair.
For brand new stuff that I discovered this episode that I'm just blown away, definitely Tekipaki.
Yep.
Definitely I was just blown away at that track. So good ear on you, Justin.
Thank you.
So next episode, what do we got coming up?
So the next time we come back, we will be talking about and listening to music from board games and card games that were made into video games.
Yes, this is going to be really interesting. This is a topic that is altogether new to me. So, and quite frankly, I love it.
Nice.
So, I really think that you guys should come back and check that one out because that's going to be a blast. We've got some really amazing tracks from some composers, just all different stuff, all different years. We've got Nintendo, Xbox, all different stuff. So, I think you'll enjoy it. So, this is Mike
and Justin
signing off for XVGM Radio.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.